Hello everyone, guessing by the fact that you clicked onto this, you probably already have some sort of idea what I'm going to be talking about, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page, once upon a time, year is 1886, and there's a guy named Bobby Stevenson, and he's Scottish, and he's an author, and he writes fiction, and he writes a novella, believe it or not. Calls it Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde, or as my American ass would put it, The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You know, classic story of a middle-aged man who has a sort of midlife crisis, develops a potion that lets him transform into a much younger, much smaller, much more evil version of himself that lets him do whatever the fuck he wants, and he kills a guy, and things go badly. It's set through the eyes of his lifelong best friend, Gabriel Utterson, who's also his lawyer, and it follows Utterson slowly piecing together what is up with Fred. We're all on the same page. Is needing me to explain it? I mean, you're here, so you know what it is. But adapted over and over and over again. It's been adapted into countless movies. It's inspired several other novellas, short stories, novels, comic series. It's inspired several songs. It's inspired stage plays. It's inspired a musical. You guys know all this already. I really don't have to explain it to you. But one of the things that, I don't know, pisses me off about like the idea that the internet holds everything is that's a manual process. In order for us to have all the records of a library, someone had to go in and scan all of that and put it into a computer system, and then someone has to maintain those servers. And we still have to have some way to access those servers through a web page or something like that. And there is a lot of manual steps that we kind of overlook. So when we say, oh, well, I know what every Jekyll and Hyde adaptation is, I mean, we're obviously going to miss some, right? Because if someone in the year 1900, when their favorite book, favorite novella was 14 years old, was like, I'm going to write a short story inspired by Jekyll and Hyde, that could very well be lost, right? And it's simply because we don't have that manual copying. And even if we do have everything manually copied into this sort of like absurdly massive collection of all human knowledge that we've put together, sifting through that and having access to every data point that you're actually trying to find is, I don't know, it's impossible. So, like, there's the idea of like hot storage versus cold storage in computer science, whereas hot storage is something that people are accessing frequently. So, like, a news page that frequently updates. I guess even that, it's gonna have like news from like the past year in hot storage, and then it might have stuff from like 50 years ago put away in cold storage, which takes a lot longer to go access, because who's really looking at the news from 50 years ago unless you're looking at like a specific thing, like I want to look at the Vietnam War. So suffice to say, it could very well be that we have lost several adaptations of favorite novella, and that is very sad. But what I really want to talk about, the reason why you guys are here, is this one adaptation that I found, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago? Maybe 7. Because, like, everyone after the pandemic has fuzzy memory, but I'm pretty sure it was before I started university, and I started university in 2020, So, 5+ years ago, something like that. And of course, because of the way that the internet works and the fact that Gen AI is now incorporated into every single search engine that you're trying to look for, and all the sponsored searches and whatnot. And even though I'm using DuckDuckGo, even DuckDuckGo still has like Gen AI trying to summarize the results instead of actually just letting me sift through the results that it can find. You guys have heard all these complaints before. And then there's also the fact of like DMCA and DRM, acronyms which spell out you cannot access thing you want to access because someone wants money, but they may or may not have actually set it up where you can actually give them money to access thing. So good fucking luck, kid. So digital rights management is a whole ethical can of worms that I really don't want to get into right now. But I mean, you guys have been through that experience of like someone's talking about like, oh, you gotta go watch shows on Poob has it for you. And it's like you can't access Poob without a credit card, and it's like you really don't want to have to remember to unsubscribe after a week or whatever after the free trial ends up, or maybe you don't have access to a credit card yet because things are the way they are. So you want to watch it on Poob, but Poob won't let you in. Poob might have it for you, but Poob does not have you. And you're miserable. Anyway, so what do you do then? Well, if you're like me, if you're, or not if you're like me. I mean, obviously, I am talking about someone else, someone that isn't me, someone that wouldn't do unethical things and then admit to them online, you know? Someone who was more deplorable than me. Imagine, if you will, myself, but perhaps this person is slightly more vile to look at, slightly more cruel, slightly slightly less ethical. And this less ethical person were to try to find what Poob does not have for me. Well, this slightly less ethical person might resort in more shady sites, more shady parts of the internet, dark parts of the internet, if you will, a dark internet, if you can imagine that. That sounds fascinating, doesn't it? Not that I frequent these parts, of course. I keep my nose clean. I keep myself out of trouble. Obviously, I'm talking about someone else, someone more sketchy, someone who goes into those sketchy places. That is definitely not me. You understand. You understand what I'm trying to do, and this bit is getting old. Anyway, sketchy me, 5+ years ago, is trying to find Jekyll and Hyde adaptations. Goes through, decides to visit a less than reputable site. Now, of course, this is a me that is heavily dissociated due to personal things going on at the time, and the mix of all of the emotions and hormones and chemicals that puberty has. You know how it is. You know how it is when your brain is just too flooded with the everything and severely unmedicated, such that it just. Memories don't actually form. You know how it is. Or maybe you don't. I hope that you don't know how it is, but if you do, then, we're in the same boat. Anyway, less than reputable me goes to a site that I can't really remember, and in, like, so, there's me finding this adaptation in early 2020 or prior, sometime when I was in high school, but I don't remember when exactly. But right when I start high school, or start university, I get a new laptop. And I do not transfer any of my old files from the old laptop to the new laptop, and I don't put anything on a USB, and I don't put anything on a hard drive, and I certainly don't copy my bookmarks over from my previous browser because I previously been using Chrome, and I'm like, I have a new laptop, and Chrome seems to be getting more evil by the day. I'll just use Firefox. I'll just use this new laptop as a new start to myself. I can I can abandon all of the dark things that I've been doing in high school, and I can become someone who is worthy and clean and good and ethical. You know how it is. So I may have had that site bookmarked, or this sketchier person who also happened to be using my laptop may have had this site bookmarked. But I do not have access to this, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the site that this less than reputable person may or may not have found an adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde on. So, me, 2020 or before, on this laptop, old ass laptop, this thing was bad. It was so slow. This poor little thing. Anyway, me, or sketchy, we'll call, sketchy, I'm trying to think of like a clever pun name for this person. Mark? Because marker? Because sketchy? Sure. So Mark was looking at this site and found this adaptation that I may or may not remember. And all I remember is I was shown this adaptation and it was phenomenal. But if I cannot, for the life of me, tell you where this adaptation lies, I blame the internet. I blame the fact that due to digital rights management and the shame that may exist around this film and the fact that by the day it seems like every megacorp is trying to direct you towards the things that the megacorp owns rather than towards the things that the little guy makes. Even though it might be higher quality, it might be more suited to your own tastes. You know how it is. Money makes the world go round. Money, money, money. Ain't it funny in a rich man's world? So, adaptation that I've lost. You understand my history with this movie. Mark showed this movie to me 5-ish years ago, and I fondly remember it. Mark will not tell me where it came from. I don't want to know where Mark found it because I do not get involved in illegal activities. You guys know me, I don't get involved in illegal activities. I am trustworthy. I am good. I'm your friend. Has the parasocial thing worked out yet? Only time will tell. So, what exactly did Mark show me? What exactly is this adaptation? What is Hyde the Return? That's the thing you guys all have been asking me about. And because this movie cannot be found for the life of me, I might as well just give you a beat-by-beat synopsis from what I recall of it. Except, of course, there's the fact of this movie that Mark found was not the original. It wasn't the original filming of it, if that makes sense. Have you tried to watch like an old Let's Play from like 2007, 2008, before we really figured out like capture cards and how to really screen record? There were a lot of people who would set up a camera in front of their TV and use that camera to record whatever they were watching. And that is what Mark found. Wasn't the original film. It was a recording of this film being projected onto what I believe was a gymnasium wall, and there was a crowd in front of it. So it seemed like it was people recording this, I don't know, social gathering party type thing. Maybe like 60 people in the room, maybe less, maybe more. I am bad at approximating and my memory is fuzzy as heck. But even Mark was not able to find the original uh, filming of this. And it is of note, this movie is from the 50s, I believe, from what I remember it being. So, it being from the 50s means I don't know how familiar you all are with tape, but with the reels that they used to keep films on, those things degrade. So, if you aren't keeping them in a place where they are very well taken care of and you aren't replacing the film as it, like they have like film restoration companies that will go through and try to pull out the actual information from the degrading tape. But if you aren't careful with those things, especially given how old they are, and this thing must be 70-ish years old now, it's gone. So it very well may be that no original copies of Hyde the Return actually exist. That the only recording exists was this like 1980s, maybe early 90s recording of the film in a gymnasium. Do I know where this gymnasium was? No. Do I know what organization was putting that movie together? No. Do I have any names? Not really. The name Grimm Studios sounds right, but even I can't find them. So, I don't know. Is this a fever dream? If it's a fever dream, then why do other people remember it? I don't know. But that's why I keep asking you guys, because someone else has to remember more details than I do. So, recording of the movie in a gym. Someone digitized that recording and then uploaded it to a pirate movie site. And Mark was able to find that, is what Hide the Return is. That's what we're looking for. But in terms of the actual content of Hide the Return, and the reason why I'm so fond of it. So, I went over the plot, basically, of Jekyll and Hyde. You have this older pair of friends who have been estranged as of late, and then one of them starts getting into shady business and has this strange associate, and the other friend investigates and really tries to, like, figure out what's going on, and eventually there's a murder, and when the friend for the final time tries to is summoned by the staff of his friend and tries to reach out to what might be his friend, what might be his friend's murderer, he's not sure. he is too late, and the friend and the evil associate, who turn out to be the same person, have committed suicide, right? Utterson, a lawyer, I remind you, he's not medically trained. He explicitly tells us in the text that he's not medically trained. But he goes through and says, like, oh, that's a dead body. Clearly that's a dead body. And it's still writhing. Like, he's still moving on the floor. Hyde's still moving, right? And Utterson goes through and reads Lanyon's confession and then reads Jekyll's confession and tries to make sense of the new will. And while he's parsing all that, what Hyde the Return suggests is, what if the suicide attempt failed? What if it did indeed make Hyde very sick, but it instead, like, being on death's door, it somehow neutralizes the effects of this potion that Henry had been taking and allows Dr. Jekyll to become himself again, going through a sort of rebirth process through this suicide attempt. That is basically the premise. And another thing, the fact that Dr. Jekyll has a law degree. So the premise of Hyde the Return is following the events of the novella. Dr. Jekyll swears off chemistry and decides that he will instead focus on law, which most of his degrees focus on anyways, and that he will partner with Mr. Utterson and instead focus on law and helping people and trying to avoid the transcendental medicine that nearly brought about his destruction. So the film opens about 10 years after the novella ends, and we have our Utterson and Jekyll partners at law. They're cohabitating at this point, and it's just kind of hand-waved of Dr. Jekyll didn't want to live in Utterson's house. It's not quite sure, but not, this is me half remembering details. They're cohabitating. There's very, very heavy gay overtones to the point that it just becomes the tones. And I don't know, they're happy, right? So it starts off with Utterson panically reading a will with Dr. Jekyll across the table from him, and then it turns out that they're reading a client's will and that they're gonna, offer reworks or, make sure that the client is fully aware of what they're doing, Call back to the way that the novella kind of opens in chapter 2. From what I remember, this film was made by people who very dearly love the novella. One of the problems with a lot of Jekyll and Hyde adaptations is that it does not focus on the base text. And that is one of the reasons that this film adaptation just sticks with me so much is, it's basically an AU. This, predates Star Trek. And I know that Star Trek was, like, a major, major part of, like, fan fiction. In terms of, like, people wanted to kiss Spock so badly that they put him in every single situation that you could think of because they wanted to kiss him. A lot of that comes from Star Trek. But Star Trek wouldn't be around until the 60s, and this is from the 50s, so it's interesting to me in that way. The way that it kind of feels like a fix-it fix instead of... You get what I'm saying, I hope. And from what I remember, then after showing us that we're opening on a new, happy, new normal with those two. Something happens and there's like a hard cut, and then we get Dr. Jekyll waking up in the gutter and his clothes are too small for him, and it's like, oh, wait a second. I don't know where I've been for the past few days, and he finds out that several days have passed and that he's relapsed, that Hyde is back somehow. Hence the title, Hyde the Return. And from there it turns into a sort of like it's Hyde trying to persuade Utterson to let him still exist. Well, it's also Dr. Jekyll returning to his studies and trying to hunt down any new medicine that might neutralize Hyde permanently, or in the worst case, how to end himself such that Mr. Utterson doesn't have to see Hyde at his worst again. And it kind of goes into like, I don't know, I got a lot of like overtones of like the effects that chronic illness can have on a long-term relationship, and the way that someone who has a chronic illness can feel this overwhelming guilt of, I am burdening the people that care about me with this. Whereas from Utterson's point of view, it's like, you've been my best friend for my whole life, and there's really not a lot of people left. We are all we've got. I'm with you to the end. That sort of thing. And it's very, very sappy and sentimental with those two. But of course the dialogue is so stilted that it's like I am heavily, heavily like applying a shipper's lens to it. But even if you look at it from just a friendship point of view, it's still very, very heartwarming, I think. And then there's also, of course, Hyde, who's trying to seduce Utterson, basically. And there's this one scene where Hyde breaks into Utterson's bedroom while he's sleeping. And there's like that mention in chapter 2 or 3 of the novella, I think, where Utterson has these dreams about Hyde breaking into Jekyll's bedroom and awakening him and requesting that Dr. Jekyll do his dark bidding or whatever. They basically do that, but with Hyde and Utterson, where it's like, oh, well, if that's what you're dreaming about, I'm going to make your dreams come true kind of thing, where Hyde's like trying to threaten Utterson, but he also clearly cares about Utterson too much and has way too much, like, he's having too much fun to really like hurt Utterson, I guess. That, or it's just really bad acting. I don't know. You'll have to find this movie in order to confirm or deny the things that I'm saying. But like, this scene haunts me. It haunts me. And I fear I cannot describe it, although I see it plainly in my mind's eye. um, and then, like, another murder happens where I think Hyde murders Mr. Guest because Mr. Guest is well aware of the Jekyll Hyde situation through like the handwriting analysis or whatever, and he gets like more into like detective work or whatever. And like Enfield's a politician, and Enfield also is very like, I know what the Hyde situation is, and I'm not letting him kill another politician. So it's like Enfield is leading this like plot to capture Hyde or something. It's really complicated, and there's like a lot of plot threads that they clearly wanted to get in, but also they kind of ran out of time, and it's just really messy. And then the bummer of the fact that this is a recording of the film and not the film is that it cuts short with what I can only assume are the last 15 minutes to go. So from what I remember is it ends on this like really suspenseful note of like Enfield having this plot and Hyde trying to convince Utterson to run away with him and Dr. Jekyll being like incredibly like, if this medicine does not work, I'm going to completely self-destruct. And it's like these three plot elements, and Utterson's caught in the middle of it, of like Enfield trying to recruit him onto his side and Hyde trying to recruit and Jekyll trying to say his goodbyes. But I don't know, very tense. And it's very clear that they were way more ambitious than they had budget for. But it is so near and dear to my heart, and this adaptation just does not exist. And or like does not exist in a way that I can show you guys. And that haunts me. So like I don't even know at this point. Like, do I have to remake this movie? Do I have to rewrite it, reanimate it? Like I don't know what to do. Cuz I've been searching for the past several years trying to find this movie again. And I just cannot find it, and I cannot find it on any list of adaptations anywhere. It makes me feel like I'm going crazy. So if it weren't for the fact that like one or two of you guys also knows what this movie is, I would be convinced that I made it up. I don't know what to tell you. So genuinely, if any of you has any information about this, please let me know. Or with other people, like it's very clear that the people who made it care a lot about this novella. I care a lot about this novella. And you know, preservation is manual. It's a manual process. And if we, this next generation, don't step up and do the preservation work, who knows what else is going to be lost. And until we find a way to access the Super Sargasso Sea, that place where ideas go to die, I'll be stuck dreaming of this adaptation that I saw once, maybe twice. So, thank you guys for listening to me ramble for half an hour or whatever. Hopefully this answers your questions, and if after you've listened to this I can still answer further questions, but I really don't know if I'm going to be of any help. Have a good day.